So we didn't have a meeting last week, so there will be 2 weeks of updates. If GitHub wants to answer, okay. So we got a PR on the dev branch fix issue were unable to access files in app data. This is just to assign the correct permissions to the files that are copied. When we move it, we don't inherit from the destination or the source permission, so we need to update the permission of the files that we move, and we do it for the media, I think. For which thing? App data folder. Well, this is in the app data folder service, but I think it was for the media files, or maybe not. Don't remember which one. But this is a fix that was done in dev. Then the guys from Laser did some changes in 110x, and that's fine because they are using it, but we'll merge them in dev later. Fixes prevent replacement info loss. There could be some conflicts if you had a placement info and some in-browser placement editions that would override existing placement info. So this logic now merges the two. And fix an ref exception in some code they added recently with the HQL query in the in subquery thing. So that's it. And it's funny because I was wondering what Matteo was doing, because we have not seen any commits from him in months, while he used to be the best committer on Orchard 1, and now we have a new commit from him. Maybe he's a boss now and doesn't code anymore. We'll see. So that's it for Orchard 1. We have Jean-Philippe here that will do a demo about localization. Jasmine is not here yet. So that's good. Demos will have localization. Then going back to the status, OrchardCore. Jean-Thierry is on fire. He's doing all the things he can. Too much, too fast. So 2 weeks ago, let's start 2 weeks ago to see what happened. Update to 3.0 preview 5. So let's look at the dev branch first. Oh, nothing was merged. So some things were merged. So let's look at what was merged first. So if I go back here 3 days, yes, nothing almost was merged. So we have commit by Zoltan to fix typo in README. Validation. We have fixing DateTime rendering in GraphQL by myself, because if you had a DateTime field, let me show you here, if you had a DateTime field here and you would export it in GraphQL, it will just only show the date part of the DateTime, which is kind of sad. And I'm sure this is bad copy pasting because we have the date field here, which is just a date part of the DateTime. It was using date graph, but here we need to return a DateTime graph type from the GraphQL.net library, and this fixed it. Order TimeZone list by name, based on some feedback from Steve. That was not understanding why the London time zone was not showing the daylight version of that. He said, no, this is not the current time of London. The issue being that the time zones, you are in a time zone, but the exact offset from GMT will change twice in the year because of summer time or winter time, okay? Daylight saving time zones. But we just show one time zone, the one you are in, and the actual time will vary correctly based on the current date. But he was confused by that, so Jasmine fixed it by adding the actual current offset, what is called the wall offset compared to the standard offset, in the output, and also by ordering the time zones by their names. And Jasmine is not here. So that's good. Update getting started to include the root. So this is a change in the getting started tutorial, and it's funny because he fixed it the day someone else reported the issue. I thought it was an issue with our packages, but no, I forgot about this specific getting started tutorial. So this one explains how to create a new project, reference the meta packages like the CMS packages, and then start the project and you go to the setup. But in this case, if you create a project by yourself, you need to create a .root folder, or ImageSharp will fail. If you use the .NET templates, then it's created automatically. That's what was confusing me, because I never get to repro it because I don't do this getting started one. I use the templates. So the tutorial is fixed, and I think there are some PRs that will create it automatically now if it's not available. We'll see. And Dean Markussen, who is currently very active on the PRs and feedback. Very good. Fixes functional test. Awesome change. So we've been plagued by failing PR checks, that the blog recipe, the blog functional test will fail sometimes. And then Jean-Thierry tried this, and I looked at the documentation for the page.click, and he's right that the page.click is an asynchronous event that doesn't return when the click is done, well, when the navigation is done, but when the click is done. So when you click, it might take some time for the navigation to finish, and it's asynchronous, which means in this case the click will be done before the page was loaded. So here we click and we say, hey, does it show Orchard setup? No, we need to wait for the navigation to be done. So the actual pattern is to do a promise.all, which is equivalent to task.whenAll in C#, and then wait for this one and this one. So it clicks and also waiting for navigation to be done. And this way, when we are here, the page is loaded and it fixes the flaky issues. So because Orchard is fast, maybe the event from here to there was super fast. Well, the generation of this page was super fast, and sometimes it was working, but sometimes it was not working. So it was a flaky test. Now it's super stable. That's it's a small change, but very important for us. It makes the functional test to be super reliable now. Awesome. Authentication misspelled in Facebook and OpenID manifest. Prevent ImageSharp from caching full-size images. So if there is no, so you factor the way we do size validation and parameter validation, so that ImageSharp is not part of the process. It's not trying to cache, to copy, and to resolve the cache for any image that doesn't have any resizing parameters. So it should be improved performance on actual websites. I took this one but there are other ones about CDN and how to improve management, and Dean Markussen is also part of the discussion. I need to follow up with that, but this is a good change. Make media path URL mapping working under a virtual folder, so fixing some base path stuff related to virtual folders. Virtual folders are a pain, so maybe at some point we'll have to just not support them, because it makes us change lots of things everywhere. I'll have to assess the benefit of that complexity just for virtual folders, because there is a mismatch between virtual folders, tenants, multi-tenants, which are kind of the same. Not the same technically, but logically you see the same separation of subfolders, prefixes. Adding missing ContentPart service in demo module. So this part has to be registered, or you will see null refs when you will try to read a test ContentPart. Use module AssemblyName and generate the wwwroot placeholder. You see here now the wwwroot folder is generated automatically by the build script. It's kind of sad that it has to be there, but that's the way it is. And the assembly name is about being able to use a different module name than the assembly name. Someone asked for it, and Jean-Thierry did that. Remove Yaml reference and upgrade dependencies. I'm kind of sad I merged this PR, because I'm okay with updating dependencies, but it also removes Yaml, and I'm afraid that someone will update today or tomorrow to the beta 3 or to the dev branch from a beta 2, and it won't migrate the site settings automatically now. So they will have to go through the NuGet package or an older or the master branch first to migrate, and then go back to the dev branch. But yeah, we have to update all the dependencies here. Just updates. Adding dynamic content type permissions to admin menu. So the dynamic content type permissions are now implemented, but were not supported in the navigation, and we had added commands actually to do that once the content type permissions were implemented, and now they are, so it's just using it, which is good. So the admin menu will reflect the permissions. Otherwise, you will click on the admin menu and it will show permission error. Fixing some templates like localization, or like splitting one localization string into multiple elements. Adding the ST on TimeZone names. This is what I mentioned earlier. The standard offset and the wall offset. Updating Bootstrap for 3.1. Specifying the location of the certificate from the recipes. Apparently the fact that it was defined here was overriding whatever you will say in the recipe. Better RSS feed description and encoding. Fixing some encoding issues in XML in regards with the XML RPC feature. Remove an extra TimeZone item. Use MailKit as a default mail sender. So the SMTP mail service that is provided with .NET apparently is obsolete, and they recommend to use this library. So Hisham made this change. So we are using a new library, MailKit, open source library, to send emails. And it also some people reported, I think from China, reported some issues with the way it was validating some servers. So this library fixes it also. Fix Bootstrap as CSS CDN link. So during the Bootstrap update we missed URL. Fix how a load file extension is loaded, because it's an array. So to read an array you need to do get string array. That's how it works with the configuration. It's not obvious, but that's how it works. It's correctly done for the media size, but not for the file extensions. But someone fixed it, that's good. Magnus Peterson made a lot of PRs this week. We merged 2 of them, by the way. Use Bootstrap modal instead of confirm. So there is no, when you have to confirm an event, an action, now it's using a modal pop-up instead of the native browser pop-up. It's nicer. Just design. Default value for n, by the way, it's localizable. The way it's localizable, if people wonder, when we localize JavaScript, we create a div that has attributes in it. You see, like title, data message, and we localize the text we want to include in JavaScript. And from JavaScript, we load by ID the element, and we get its data attribute with the value of the localization. So you don't inject the localization in JavaScript, you inject it in HTML for encoding and security reasons, and then from JavaScript you read the value. Default value for BooleanField. So this is adding a setting in the BooleanField to mark the field to be checked by default if you want. So you can say here there is a checkbox called default value is true, and when you check this checkbox, when you enter the editor, the checkbox of the field will, well, the Boolean field will be checked by default, or true, whatever true is, however true is represented by the editor, a switch, a checkbox, an image, a button, I don't know. Antoine merged a bulk action support for the features, for the module, so you can enable multiple features at the same time now. Very good. We had the checkboxes, but we were not taking them into consideration. Something I commented on the PR, and that might be useful for everyone, is that he was using the select list item. And when you use a select list item, the issue is that it will double encode the things because it only accepts a string. So we localize a value and we do a toString on that, which from the view localizer encodes the things, but we convert it as a simple string that is passed to the selected item. And when this thing is rendered, it will be encoded again because it doesn't know it was already encoded. So to prevent that, you don't use these things like any helper that accepts a string will be encoded. So never pass a toString of something that has been localized. So you use HTML directly like this, t-enable. So it's more code to write, but it's correct code. So that's it for all the changes which are in dev already. Questions? Then, if I look at everything else, so many things that we've never had so many open PRs. A shame. Good for the community and for the project. Shame on me because I can't review PRs as fast as they appear. Well, I can because apparently they are going down. But people keep creating them. 2, 3, 4, 5 in the last 24 hours. Okay, BooleanField default value, no reference exception, which is sad. So we have big PRs, very important PRs. We talked about it last weeks. Some new ones you see here. Dean Markussen created this one, the CDN app settings. We talked about a few weeks ago. New one like Facebook SDK, GitHub authentication. All these ones will be merged soon, and we'll have demo, or we'll be able to show demos. Setup screen localization, which we opened recently. Some updates on the, well, RTL now support for login setup screen. Or two different things, RTL and localization. And yeah, many things. So demos, who has demos today? I know one. So localization. Matthias, do you have a demo for the field? Or you said the one you already did last year was fine? What I miss here? Okay. Demo from Jean-Philippe. Are you ready? You can be not ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now yes.
Okay, perfect.
You're a presenter, so you can share.
Share screen. Sure. Which screen? this one. Okay. Let's remove this and put this in. All right. So this presentation thing's in the way. Okay. All right. So I've been working on the content localization part. I think it's mostly working. I got a couple little bugs that I just found there with the changes Jasmine did last week. So I reverted back to my actual, my last commit. So how should I do this? Should I go from scratch or just...
No, it has to be from scratch. Now let me think how it should be done. Show how to add supported cultures, because this is important.
Okay.
And then how to make a content item localizable.
Okay.
And localize it. Easy.
So I'll start by blog. So
you're creating a new one. Good.
Yeah, a new tenant. So I just tested this. So I already have taken blog. So I'm creating a new blog with a blog recipe, SQLite. Let's go. Let's set it up. So now we have the recipe runs. We have a blog with
so fast. Oh my god, it's amazing.
Simple blog post. Yeah, and this is just a laptop CPU too. It's crazy. Admin. Okay, going in the admin. So right now, if I go to the modules, and if I search for localization, I see that none of them are enabled. So I'll enable both at the same time. So I made this one depend on this one.
Wait.
Yep.
You just have to enable the content localization, right?
Yep, because it's a dependency.
Okay.
So it will enable both.
So wait. What are these two modules? What is localization?
Localization was there before. I think script worked on it. It adds, I believe it adds this piece or this one. I don't know. It was there before.
Oh, okay. It adds supports for available cultures and also UI UI localization and culture management.
I think so.
Okay, makes sense.
So I made mine depend on that one because it's kind of
dependent?
Important.
Because of the
yes.
default. Okay.
I don't know if it should be, but I think so because No?
I think it's just for the UI localization.
Oh, okay. So maybe
we'll
I'll
try.
change that.
You'll try. Remove, and you'll see if it still works. What services it's requesting it doesn't have, but I think it should still work.
Okay, let's try it.
Because the abstraction will provide you the service implementations, which will be default implementations, and then this module will let you choose, will let you configure which cultures are available. That's a different matter. Okay, but that should work without.
I disabled it, but since I made my other one.
Yeah, that's why I didn't ask you to test it. You will have to remove the logical dependency between the two.
Okay, I'll test it later. So for now, I enabled it. So now you can see they're both enabled. And I will start by going and adding a supported culture for the site, I guess. So right now you see there's nothing. It's just using the system culture as a default culture. So I'll go and add one. So I'll start. I'm used to this. So French Canada and English Canada. This. Okay, so I have both culture. Now I have to go back to this screen and change it here. So the UX of this could be improved a little bit, but so I'll choose French as the default and save. So now we have French as the default culture and English as a secondary culture. So if I go to the blog right now, we see that there's no content localization features. I'll go in the content definition and the blog post, edit, add the localization part.
You have to go slow when you click because when you say something, we are like 2 seconds behind your screen.
Okay,
And
I'll
you,
go
and
see.
you click quickly, so we don't even see what you click, but we can hear what you said you would click. So here, yes, you added localization part to a blog post. Okay.
Yes, so I'm about to add it. Here we go, it's added. I like it on top, so I'll just save this again. It's there. So now if I go back to my blog and edit this blog post that we have already, I see that current culture is ENCA. Okay. It used the default one. It set the default one initially. No, French. That's wrong. So this is because that's actually a bug, I think. So I made it fall back to system culture when you have a content item that was existing before you attach the content localization part onto it.
So right now, when you edit the blog post, it doesn't have a localization part instance.
Okay. No, so it's null. The culture is null, which I just made this workaround right now.
Okay. So the culture is
it was blowing up.
And then, but it says current culture ENCA, but your default culture is FRCA.
Yep. So
that's a bug. It should show that it's the default culture, FRCA.
Okay. But what if there's no culture? What if I went and I add a content localization part without having previously gone into the configuration and added the culture?
It will take the default culture, whatever the default culture is.
So it's like okay, so first it will take...
The idea is that you don't have any culture right now, but it will be set when you publish or you save the content item. And what it will take is the default, unless you say something else. So current culture should be default, unless you select a culture.
Yeah, if I select English, then...
But I think you should not be able to select the culture.
No?
I think you should create new items for a culture.
Okay, so I wasn't sure about that. I added this feature for enabling me to test, but so right now, assume that the culture is null because it's the first time we open it with the localization part. And then if I save and continue, then everything's fine here. And you see here you have the other culture. So I'm not sure about this.
Okay, now we can see. So now we say current culture CA. Okay.
Yeah. And then other, so maybe you're telling me to remove this first part here to be able to change the culture of the current item. I think Antoine mentioned that as well.
Yeah, that's how it was done in Orchard 1. So the idea is that a content item has a culture. You can create clones of this content item for other cultures. That's it.
Okay. So this is what clicking this button does.
Okay. So here you see other cultures. What you need to see is the ones that exist and the ones you can create.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah, so if let's go back and add a third one just to show.
So the drop down is nice because you can show all the cultures, but the drop down should list all the cultures, and clicking on the other cultures should either link to the existing item in edit mode or create the other item in edit mode with the culture you selected.
Yep, that makes sense. So now if I go back and I just refresh this page after adding another culture here on the site settings, tell me if I'm going too fast. I try to click slower. So I refresh this page after adding it, and now you see the current one is FRCA, but the other one you have EN and FR. So if I click here, it's going to go and create the English version. So I'll just modify this title, EN, just so that, it's written there anyway. Okay, so if I go save this one, and I open this drop-down back, you see my French Canada is there, my French one is there. So this one already exists, this one doesn't exist, but clicking here will just go to it. But if you click on English now, it goes to it. If you click on French, it's going to create it.
Yeah, so we need a UI hint to know that the French doesn't exist when you click it, but the English exists.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, initially I add that. It says like in parentheses, it said like create or not exist or something. So that's where I am right now. There's a, like I said, there's a couple bugs with the current culture being displayed here, and I was not sure what the behavior should be for when there's when you have no culture in your site setting. It should fall back, I guess, to the site culture and tell you. I don't know. So we have some decision to make, but that's where I got. And oh yes, also if you go back to this blog, this is very ugly. I plan to change this, but you can see it, which culture each content.
So it should be a tag like draft publish. You see the little labels with a nice globe or something like that, whatever, with the culture, so we can see. And also what we should be able to see is in the buttons, the same way indeed as in the editor, to be able to navigate to the other versions. You see edit actions, the buttons on the right. You can add another button if you want with the localization, the list of the localizations to link directly to the other ones. That might be interesting.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if we should group them together or if we should leave them separate.
They are separate technically, so we can't just show one or the other. What we can do is a filter at the top.
So this main view, I think, has it. Or this one.
But I'm not sure. It's not extensible. Or it is extensible, I don't remember. Yes, I think it's extensible because I think, or we should make it extensible if not, so we can add a culture, so we could filter for a culture. There are many things we can do in the UI, and it's very specific to everyone's flow. Not everyone works the same. One feedback I got from a big customer for Orchard One was that they wanted to be able to have a matrix or a table of all the content items which are localized, and on the left you list all the content items line by line, and vertically you have a column for each language that you support, and checkboxes or buttons to see if it's existing, non-existing, translated or translated. And this would have helped them to translate the site, because when you have about, you don't know which content item you still have to translate.
Right.
So if you have a table with, that's a totally different view. It might be just a different feature because not everyone wants to work this way or wants this feature. But that's just one feedback I got from big customers who have lots of content items and lots of languages, and they had no way to have an overview of what they had to translate.
Makes sense.
But here, if I'm in this view, I'm like, a button for each content item to navigate directly to the ones I need to create or edit, so I don't have to go to edit. Might even be better in this view than the edit screen, I don't know, to create new items, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe like I thought about using this blank space here and put all the items or all the locales and make them clickable.
No, put a button on the right with a drop down and done.
And with all of them?
Yeah, as a drop
with
down.
With maybe a little icon that says create or not created.
Oh, all of them? I was thinking about a drop down.
Okay. Just like this.
Like the action, yes, but called localizations or whatever, and then when you drop down, you see all the localization. If there is only one, then you can show the link directly. If there are two, that's what we do for the actions. I think this one, and you can reuse the same button, the same logic in the editor. So if you have a drop-down button that will show all the locals and let you edit or create for this local, it can be the same one that you use here instead of this one, you see? So you can maybe I don't know, or something similar.
I'm open to anything really.
What do people say on the chat? They chat a lot. What do they say?
Yeah, let's see. Okay.
culture neutral.
Yeah,
So,
I think Jasmine mentioned that.
Yes, Sotiris was urban IT. When you say culture neutral, you mean so the fields, the culture neutral fields, I assume. And so for the fields, we designed it already, and I assume it's not yet implemented. The idea was when you enable this feature, there will be a setting for each field, and probably also each part. We can do the same thing for each part, we said, I think, that you can say this field or this part is culture neutral, so it won't change across languages. For instance, if you have a shirt content type and a color property, the color doesn't change in English or in French. It's still the same color. It might be displayed, well, the color itself doesn't change. The name might change, but the color itself doesn't change. So when you define the field, you will say culture neutral, and the idea is that when we clone a content item to localize it, we copy all the values, fine, and when we save the content item, we will sync the new value of the color to all other content items with the same master content item ID. So we'll replicate the change you made on culture neutral fields or parts to other content items. That's the idea.
Makes sense.
And I think that supports the culture neutral. Now, going back on the fact that you started with a blog post which didn't have any culture, but I assume, so let me think now. The blog post doesn't have any culture. I don't remember what we said in the design about the fact that it should have a culture, or can it be kept null and then it will then be assumed as a default culture, or should we not set the culture when it's the default culture, so that we know that null means default culture, whatever it is. So if tomorrow you change the default culture,
this is the part that I did.
What did you
do? I asked you on last Thursday what we should do then. And if there's no culture assigned to a content item, then it's going to use the same fallback mechanism that we have for the site culture settings. If there's no site culture settings, then it will fall back to the the system culture. So it's not assigning, but it's going to try to, if you're saving a content item that has no culture, then it's going to try to save that item with the current system culture or the current default site culture that you have assigned.
One second.
So there's no null for. We don't use null because we can't have on the front end website items that have invariant cultures. They're always displayed in a specific culture.
I'm back. I had to get my power cord. Sorry. So you mentioned about the system culture, but I think my question was more about in the database. How do I get the, like, I know the, so for your choices of cultures are not easy. Because here I have 2 FR and 1 English, but CA. Okay. So if what's my scenario? If does it make sense to change the default culture? What
happens if I change?
Because if you change the default culture, all the ones which have already been saved will still
be kept.
Yeah.
They won't be affected.
No, it's not affected.
But
it's just if you create a new item, then it's going to try to create it as the new default culture.
But let's say I have a blog post, okay, and then I change the default culture, and I save it again. If it had the previous culture, it will not change. But if it didn't have any culture, it will save it with the default culture, right?
Yes, exactly.
So,
yeah.
yes.
So that's why I'm saying maybe if it doesn't have a culture, and then we save it, then, well, it should keep its culture. It should always keep its culture, which is null in this case.
So it's going to use either site culture or system culture in that order.
Okay.
It's going to have. It's never going to be null because we can't show an invariant culture content item on the front end.
Why?
It will not match for the content, the culture that we are using on the front end. It will always fall back to the system culture, so we're trying to replicate the same mechanism here.
The front end has no relationship here with what I just said. If you try to load the content item, you have its URL. Its URL doesn't depend on the culture it has. It's its URL. So if I create a blog post, I call blog post 1. It doesn't have a culture. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's null. It has a localization part, but it's null. So it's assumed to be whatever the default culture is.
Yes.
But it doesn't have any culture, it's null. If I go on the URL /post1, I will see this content item. What you're saying is that with the culture picker, we'll assume that the language is the default one. Okay? Which is okay. Now if I change the default language and I go on post 1, which is still null, I will still see post 1, the same one with the same data. And it will assume that the current language is the new default language. So I don't see an issue. I think we could keep it null. The only concern being that in the database it will be null. And if we want to get the content items of a specific culture, we need to look for this specific culture or null if the specific culture is the default. So that might be an issue. So
more potential for null reference.
So we might want to set the culture on everything. Yeah, might be better to always set the culture, even if it's
when you. I think that when you create the content, you're doing it for a specific culture, and if for some reason later on you go and change it to from, let's say, well, now my site is, I want the default to be French so that people coming in see the French one, for example, like the homepage.
So you have to say
the French one.
You have to edit.
But then I don't want my English content to show up. Right?
No, that's okay. But my concern is that if you have lots of content items which are existing when you enable the localization, what do you do with the existing content item? I assume you have to edit them and save them to assign a culture.
Yeah, for assigning a localization step. Yeah.
So we might want a feature later when we have this issue recurring, that add a feature that we could set the culture on the content items that not have any culture. And that will do a batch update or something like that. Okay.
The bulk. Should we do something on? Do you have an event of some kind when you attach a part?
Yes, but I don't want to do that. So it's a common pattern we've had in Orchard, that we don't want to edit content items when we enable a feature or like synchronously, because the issue is that you might have 1 million content items and it might fail, or it might take hours, and you don't want that enabling a feature take hours. So what we do is a separate feature that is asynchronous using Ajax, that you go and you say, okay, execute this thing, like a recipe thing, execute, and it will do it by page, asynchronously from the browser, so it doesn't block your browser, it doesn't block your site, and it's processing the items page by page. We call them upgrade steps or update steps. We have lots of them in Orchard. One for migrations from one version to the other, like when we do schema changes. So we could have a tool like this, or a feature like this, that when you enable, you have an admin option that says assign this culture to all invariant content items, and it will do it for you.
Just like the matrix you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, we could display all the content types and what version we want for them, and then you say apply, and then it will apply it to all content items. So this is something you effectively action. It's not automatic, otherwise it might be too long.
Makes sense.
When I say invariant, I mean the ones who don't have any culture set. That's what I mean. Like, we don't know their culture because they haven't been saved, or they have a localization part, but we don't know their culture. That's my concern. Meaning existing content items that have never been set.
Yes, so that will happen all the time.
So when you say null is now resolved as site culture or site culture as a fallback, you mean when we edit a content item and it doesn't have a localization, we will assume that we want to say them with the site culture. Okay, now I need to remember what you said. A site culture or system culture as fallback. Site culture or system culture as fallback. So for me there is one culture. You say site culture or system culture. This is the site culture all the time.
Yeah, but this is not saved in the site settings if we're keeping it as system, so it's falling back to the thread, the current thread culture.
So, yes, but what you say is that you are talking about the UI here that Jean-Philippe is showing, which is that when we don't have, when we have never set the default culture, it will suggest system. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but this is just So yeah, I see what you mean. So when we do default culture, give me the default culture, and there is none, we will fall back to the system culture, and this is okay.
So there's never going to be a null resolved as invariant culture. This is what I was saying previously.
No, I mean when we save a content item, we will assign a culture always.
Yeah, but in the case that we didn't enable that module for
we don't
previously, then those content items will have a null value in the database as the localization part, and there would be no localization set assigned to it. So, if we open the item and we want to save that item, it's going to fall back to either the site culture or the system culture.
Yes.
And instead of just setting to invariant, because we don't really know.
We don't set it invariant. And when we display it and there is no culture, the same thing. We will assume that this is the default culture.
Yeah.
This is the default culture, which can be the system culture if we have never set the default culture.
Makes sense like that to me, yeah.
Okay, cool. So it works. You have the feedback in terms of UI and behavior. So I assume the behavior is good because this is what you did. When you save, you assign the default culture. There was just a bug in the way it was presented.
Yeah. I never assigned a system culture though.
No, you never do that usually.
That's just null.
Yeah, so it's just when we never set a default culture, we don't know. We will say, okay, then
it's my changes.
Yeah, is it correct to do that? Could not we just define the default culture as the system culture when we do the setup? And this way we always have a default culture. It happens to be the system culture we used by default.
Depends if you have two people which have two different system cultures.
No. Again, you did this mistake last week. There is only one server.
Yeah, but I'm developing on my PC, which is in French, and my server is in English. So
then use the guy who set it up. Use the default, the same way with your local time zone. And then if you want to change it, then change it or define it in the recipe. Maybe in the setup sometime, but we can define a value from the guy who installed it. That's fine.
I agree with that. In that case, then people should always have set the default culture manually.
And it will always be set and by default with the culture of your server, which is usually fine, and which is actually what it does by default if you don't set it. So it shows the system one.
So either on the setup, we should always have something that says which default culture do we want to have, so we never fall back to.
Two things.
Yeah.
Two things. When we when there is when we create the site settings, whatever way it's created, from recipe, from code, from whatever, it uses the current system one as the default value, like we do for the default. Well, almost. Okay, let's say you see resource debug mode. We have a default. For the default culture, the default will be the current system. Then the next step is, if we want to integrate it in the setup module, we can, like we did for the default time zone. And we can even show the default system one as a first choice. So this way, because we might have more setup modules later, like Antoine has his own for tryOrchard.net. Okay, so there should be a default behavior, and there should be a setup behavior. That's the idea. The same way for default time zone. So having that in the setup screen is optional. Having a default value in the default culture should not be optional. We should have a default value. We should have a default culture set, which will default to the system culture. This way, in the default dropdown, we don't see system and in parentheses the culture. No, it should just show the one in the parentheses. This is the default culture, and it's set. It's in the settings. If you don't like it, change it.
Yeah, it would be easier like that, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jean-Philippe is mentioning the culture selector. So there are many things to do yet. The culture selector. There is also the fields synchronization.
Yeah. This is all stuff we can split off, right?
Yeah, we can accept your PRB for the field local field. Yeah, we can do that in multiple steps. So focus on that. Focus on finishing your thing first, Philippe. This
I'll
way.
finish the part, and then we can do another one for the picker.
Picker. Isham said he will work on that. We have the picker. We have the fields. What else? Yeah, and then we look at some UI tools, but already if we have that, that's good. Integrate also, ensure that we can have a custom auto route pattern, so that the liquid, there are some liquid helpers to get the culture of a content item. But I assume it's already supported. We just need to check that the part is available from liquid, that we can do a content item dot content dot localization part dot culture. So we can generate URLs with the culture. So this way you could have post one or post ones or /fr/post1 for the French blog post.
Okay. It's when you go into the
auto-route part edit. Auto-route edit.
Here and this.
Yes, this thing. You see, so for the auto-route of the blog post, you could say you want the culture in between.
Okay. Yeah,
and maybe we want to say if there is no culture, or if it's the default culture, then we don't want anything. So maybe we need a custom filter or custom tag to be able to render the culture this way. Like if it's the default one, you don't render anything. Tools like this. It can be also another PR, but that will be useful. We might need to design something here. All the options that people might want.
Makes sense. So I'll try to continue working on this when I have time.
That's
it's
good.
Been pretty busy lately.
Okay,
but,
just my helping now. It's good.
Yeah. So when I want to make some changes, do I just do a PR against his branch?
So we agreed with Jasmine that actually he should have pushed to your branch. He didn't know he could do that. But the idea will be that because you don't have access to the branches like this, and we have access to our branch, we should have continued on your branch, pushed on your branch.
Okay.
It will be still.
I can give access to anyone.
No, you don't have to.
Oh no.
Because you forked from Orchard. All the people who have access to Orchard have access to your fork, to your branch in your fork, because you made a PR to her. That's the idea.
I see. Okay, cool.
And if it doesn't work, we'll add you to the repository. We talked about it with Jasmine yesterday.
Okay. let me know.
Good,
Something I would like to work towards anyway. Trying to get be a main contributor at some point.
Okay. What else? What else? What else? Any other demos? Antoine, do you have something? I will ask you.
No, I need to check my PR about user activities.
Yeah, you have a PR waiting. Okay.
What I did this week is that I created a OrchardCore.Translations, the repository in GitHub.
Yes, here. Oh, no, I thought I would mention, I forgot here, sorry. Yes, so we talked about it on Thursday. So the idea is that, thank you for the link, there is this new repository. I haven't looked at the repository yet. The idea is we will automatically get all the localizations from Crowdin with this thing. So there will be a script, an AppVeyor script, that will automatically list all the localizations from yeah, I think, well, actually, yeah, you don't, that's okay, but you don't need that. The goal is that we don't have to copy all the things in this repository, but it will just have an AppVeyor script that will run when we want, or from whenever there is a change in Crowdin, that will list automatically all the files from Crowdin and generate a NuGet package for each of the languages, and then push it to NuGet. That's the idea. So we actually thing in this repository, but a README and an AppVeyor script. That's the idea. We might want to list the languages, maybe, if we want to opt in for a language before it's shipped, but I don't think we will need to check in any language package here. Makes sense? Because I assume we can scrape, well, we could have a list of languages in the AppVeyor script, but that's it. The AppVeyor script will download the files because we know the links to these files. We'll create a package and we'll publish a package to NuGet. And the goal of this of that is that then on NuGet we'll have a package for each language. So from your project, if you want the English Canadian localization, you can just reference this package and it works out of the box. And it's a package that will contain the app data, that exactly this structure, so it will contain the file for the language. Actually, maybe this structure, this one, this file, but in the other folder. Cool. On the left. Okay, so thank you. What else? Localization PRs, we saw that. Workshop. So last week I was not there because I was working on an ASP.NET workshop. What was the? Does someone have the URL? I forgot the URL. ASP.NET dash. I put it on GitHub. On Gitter. Does someone have it? Oh my god. Yeah, this one. So I did this thing. Well, the full ASP.NET team did that thing. Many steps, the .NET Core, MVC application, dependency injection, all the things here. Maybe not this one, but something which was oh, let me see. Yeah, probably this one. Yes, that's it. So this one is an agenda, a conference agenda website, and it was very interesting. And I did it also in Orchard, just to be sure that we can do the same thing in Orchard. And I think we will do in the same way we did the getting started guides, the guides in the documentation. If you look at the documentation, we have this getting started section, the guides thing. And So we'll do this part, the bigger part, as a workshop that will show many more things about how to build something in Orchard. So I will use probably the same kind of site to do that. That will be interesting. Learn all the parts of Orchard with that. That's it. And last point, RTL Isham is working very hard on right to left integration with PRs for new CSS, for the setup screen, for the logging screen. See, I gave some feedback this morning, so apparently he's working on something else to make it even better. We'll see how it goes. Otherwise, I will give you some help, because right now the only issue is that it's not an issue, but I would prefer if we didn't have to manage two different files and then have to have some condition in the theme to check the current culture and then switch the CSS files. So if we can have one single file, then everything will be better. So he's currently looking into that, how to make a single file, and then we can merge that. Questions? No questions, no comments? Good. Then see you on Thursday for the triage. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.